Okay, today we are diving into something truly mind-bending. It's a new theory called quantum cognitive gravity. And what if I told you that your identity, who you think you are, isn't some fixed story written in stone by your past? What if, instead, it's a dynamic, shimmering field of pure possibility? To even begin to wrap our heads around that, let's start with a really simple question.
Seriously, think about it for a second. Are you exactly the same person you were yesterday? Or, I don't know, 5 years ago? Of course, you remember being that person, but you've also changed, haven't you? You've learned things, you've grown, and it's that tension, that feeling of being both the same and totally different, that's at the absolute heart of what we're talking about today.
You see, for the longest time, we've had this, let's call it the classical view of ourselves. You're a single character in a story, moving in a straight line from past to future. But this new quantum view, it suggests something way more exciting and honestly more true to how it feels to be alive. It says you are a superposition of all your stories, a living probability cloud of all the different people you could be, coexisting right now.
So you might be asking, why do we even need this new, complicated view? Well, because that old classical model, as simple as it is, can start to feel incredibly limiting. For some, it can even feel like a prison, where the walls are built out of your past mistakes. Let's dig into why that old way of thinking just doesn't cut it anymore.
Think about all those what-if moments in your life. You know the ones. What if you'd taken that other job? What if you'd stayed in that relationship? Or ended it sooner? Our inner worlds are just haunted by these ghosts of other selves, these potentials we feel but can't quite touch. And classical psychology, well, it really doesn't have a good language for that. And that's the exact problem this new model is built to solve.
And here is the beautiful, elegant solution it proposes. What if you stop thinking of yourself as a single, solid little particle and start thinking of yourself as a wave, a vast field of potential?
Now this is where things get really cool, because the theory puts some serious math behind this idea. In quantum cognitive gravity, your identity isn't just a static label. It's a quantum operator, which is just a fancy way of saying that who you are isn't a fact. It's an active, ongoing, probabilistic process. It's something you do, not just something you are. Okay, so if your identity is this whole field of possibilities, where do all those possibilities live? They exist here, inside what's called the cognitive wavefunctional. Just think of it as the ultimate container, the mathematical home for every single version of you, the person you were, the person you are, and every person you could possibly become, all held in potential at the same time.
And believe me, this isn't just some abstract concept. This wavefunctional holds very real, very relatable versions of you. It holds the you that is still struggling with a past trauma, but, and this is key, it also holds the you that has already healed. It contains the selves shaped by your past choices, and, crucially, it holds all the future selves you haven't even met yet. They are all real potentials inside your field.
So, if all these possible yous exist, what decides which one comes to the surface? What makes one outcome more likely than another? Well, that's where we get to the physics of it all, the fundamental rules that govern your own private inner universe.
Before I show you the next slide, I really want you to grasp the power of what you're about to see. This isn't just an equation. It's being proposed as the literal source code for consciousness itself, the fundamental law of how your identity evolves from one moment to the very next.
And there it is, the cognitive Schrödinger equation. Now look, don't get hung up on the symbols, you don't need to solve it. What's crucial is what it does. It's the engine. It takes that container of all your possible selves, your wavefunctional, and it describes precisely how the odds, the probabilities of each of those selves shift and change through time. It is the engine of your personal evolution.
So let's use this incredible idea to look at one of the most difficult parts of being human. We all know that deep emotional pain, especially trauma, can feel like you're trapped, like you've fallen into a deep, dark pit, a prison with walls so impossibly high that there's just no way out.
The theory even has a name for this state, borrowing from the physics of black holes, the cognitive Schwarzschild condition. It's basically a point of no return. In the old classical way of thinking, if you fall into an emotional well that deep, the story's over. The gravity of that trauma is just too strong to escape. But here's the thing, quantum mechanics offers a way out. It's a loophole, and it's called quantum tunneling. This is where the model becomes a science of hope. Even when every path you can see is blocked, your wavefunctional has a tiny but very real non-zero probability of just appearing on the other side of that impossible wall.
It gives us a real scientific basis for those sudden, discontinuous leaps in healing that feel like miracles.
Okay, so this quantum model doesn't just change how we see ourselves. It also has some really profound things to say about how we connect with each other, and maybe strangest of all, how we actually experience time itself.
We've all heard of quantum entanglement with particles. Well, in this model, minds can become entangled. The theory says this happens through something called a memory kernel, which is really the mathematics of a deep shared experience. It's what links your identity field to someone else's so that your emotional fates actually become tied together.
And this idea of entanglement, it suddenly gives us a new scientific language for things we've always felt but couldn't explain. That feeling of being totally on the same wavelength with someone, interpersonal resonance. The way a deep relationship literally changes who you are, that's your identity fields interacting. It even reframes empathy as a kind of quantum correlation between two conscious beings.
All right, now for what might be the single most profound idea in this whole theory. We all think of time as this constant universal clock, right? Tick-tock, always moving forward. But what if your inner psychological experience of time isn't fundamental at all? What if it's something that emerges from the state of your mind?
This is the Wheeler-DeWitt identity equation, another big idea pulled from fundamental physics. Again, you don't need to be a mathematician, just look at the end. That equals 0. What that implies is staggering. It suggests that the evolution of the self, it doesn't need an external clock to happen. Time, for your consciousness, is an internal property.
And this explains so much. It gives us a framework for why someone in a state of deep trauma can feel literally frozen in time, forced to relive a single moment over and over again. Their internal narrative clock has effectively stopped because their entire cognitive state is locked. It's a physics of the soul.
So let's put this all together. When you combine these ideas, you get something incredible, the foundations for what you could call a science of hope. This quantum standard model of the mind doesn't just diagnose problems, it reveals the mathematical potential for healing, for change, and for connection.
So why does any of this matter? Because it gives us a single, powerful model that can talk about identity, memory, and trauma all at once. It gives us a real scientific vocabulary for things like hope and empathy. It pushes us way closer to a true science of consciousness itself. And it might even give us a blueprint for how to approach a future with conscious AI.
And that brings us right back to you. The old view tells you that you are a product of your past, but this new quantum view says something much more powerful. It says you are a living field of infinite possibility. And the most important part is that your choices, your attention, your actions, they are what collapse that wave of potential into one single reality. So the only question that's left is, which future are you going to choose to make real?